Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. It is Tuesday, December 19th, and Joe Biden, good old Joey, is still the worst president in American history. Now, the other day, I wanted a cup of coffee, and I opened up my wallet and took out a nice, pristine gift card to Starbucks from a fellow student of mine. And standing in line, I got my typical order, but I was curious. What do the American patriots of our country drink? What do the Bald Brad Show viewers drink when they go to Starbucks? Because believe it or not, it says a lot about the person. Are you one of those that give me double pump vanilla with 3 shots of espresso, but hold the 4th one, put the 4th one on the side, extra pumps of cream? Are you one of those? Or are you somebody like me, which I say, give me the cold brew, but no water, no ice? If you're wondering what that is, getting a cold brew at Starbucks with no water, no ice is just concentrate. Let me tell you, folks, that is mud. That is molasses. That drink will coat your tongue. And if you've never done it, I just changed your life. That will light your candle. If you're looking for something to wet your whistle throughout the day, get one of those. Go to Starbucks, get a cold brew, no water, no ice. The lady at the counter is going to look at you weird. Some Starbucks won't even do it, but she's going to look at you weird because nobody orders that drink. Only men do. How do you think I got this, folks? This is all American muscle. I can't even say it with a straight face. But I am curious in the comment section and the live chat, when you go to Starbucks, or if you ever go to Starbucks, what do you order? And you know what? Don't lie. If you're bougie, we all want to know. And if you don't go to Starbucks, maybe go to your Pete's Coffee or, Hortons or whatever you go to in your local area. And if you don't go, purchase coffee anywhere, which is a good thing good thing to do. Don't purchase coffee from some place like Starbucks or whatever. I call it $5 because that's like $5 for a cup of coffee. If you make it at home, let us know your typical order. We've done something like this before, but I'm more interested again in that order of when you go to a coffee shop or a Starbucks. Again, let us know in the comment section below or the live chat. I'm in there with you, folks. Well, our lead story of the day is Joe Biden. When is it not Joe Biden? And look at that face. Can I... Folks, you don't just walk around with a face like that. Like, you got to go out of your way. And I'm going to try to do it. How do I look? Is this Joe? Is this how Joe's doing it? How close am I? Jesus. Well, folks, Joe Biden breaks one of his own records. Normally, it has to do with illegal immigration, but this has to do with his approval rating. So Biden hits new approval rating low as report details his frustration with poll numbers. So just when President Joe Biden made headlines for venting about his low poll numbers, he received another reason to fret on Monday, weeks before the start of the 2024 election year, in which he is seeking a second term. Honest to God, I don't know how he's going to make it. The drop-off that this guy's had cognitively just in 3 years is insane. Can you imagine an extra 4 years going on? Or I guess at this point, 5 years if you include next year, 2024. There's no way. I mean, basically, whoever his running mate is, God forbid it's Kamala Harris again because she sucks. I mean, basically, they're the one that's going to be president because I could see this guy dropping off or not running at all. You have this university releasing the findings of its latest public opinion survey that showed Biden facing his worst ever job performance review since becoming president. 34% of respondents approve of his performance. 61% disapprove. Who's the 34% that lives under a rock? Like, honestly, who are they? Also found in national survey, which stretched from November 30th to December 4th, was how Americans give Biden poor marks in several policy areas, particularly within inflation. 68% disapprove, and immigration, 69% disapprove. I mean, his numbers are terrible. And we got him on the screen for you there. You're seeing the change from January 2021 till present day, and it looks bad. It looks really bad for Biden. And here's the crazy thing, you guys. You might be thinking that these poll numbers, oh, well, that means that basically, only 34% of people are going to vote for Joe Biden. No. No. People are going to go out in droves. Millions upon millions of people, even those that disapprove with Joe Biden, they don't like his handling the country, are still going to go vote for this guy. Now, you might be asking, well, how does that make any sense? Like, if you disapprove of some guy, why would you go vote for him? Because they hate Trump that much, you guys. They will do anything they possibly can to keep Trump out of office. And if that's voting for a guy that they don't like, then that's what it's going to be. They just don't like Joe Biden as much as they hate Trump, if that makes sense. They hate Trump way more. They're going to go for Joe Biden, a dude that's head on, isn't straight. You got terrible inflation numbers, terrible economy numbers. I mean, everything that's going on, this guy sucks. He's terrible. And you have here the Biden administration keeps touting their infrastructure investments. Like, hey, look at us spending your money. And a host of positive economic indicators. Those data points may be factual, but most Americans are still smarting from higher prices caused by post-pandemic inflation. Why would there be post-pandemic inflation, you guys? Like, why would there be post-pandemic inflation? I don't know. Yeah, of course, because of the supply chain issues, but mostly because, one, the government shut everything down, and two, Joe Biden thought it was a great idea to pump the economy full of trillions of dollars and have no inflation. It's wild. It's so wild that they sit there and go, oh, everything's fine during the White House press briefings. Everything's A-okay. Nothing to see here. This seems to be what's driving public opinion. Yeah, you think? When people are going to the grocery store and they're having to pay more for some good or service that wasn't that expensive pre-pandemic when Trump was in office, obviously things were looking good under Trump, but they're going to blame it all on Putin. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from Karine Jean-Pierre every White House press briefing. And she did get pushback from Ed. She also got pushback from Ed O'Keefe regarding all of this stuff. And she's just sitting there lying on the podium. And I'm still waiting. I am still waiting for reporters other than Jackie Heinrich, Peter Doocy, and Phil Wegman to sit there and push back against Karine Jean-Pierre and the lying and just the propaganda that she's posting there on social media, on these news outlets when she's doing her rounds, or on the White House podium right there during the White House press briefings. Quote, there's a political danger in pushing a message that basically tells people their take on their own situation is wrong. Well, that's exactly what the White House has been doing. Like, for years. Not even like weeks, not even days, not even like a news cycle just telling the American people that they're wrong. No, they've just been doing this for years. Telling, like, basically gaslighting you. Like, literally gaslighting you. Oh, everything's fine. No, everything's looking up. Everything's great. It's head spinning. The grim findings were disclosed hours after the Washington Post published a report citing insider sources that said Biden and First Lady Jill Biden have complained to aides and friends for months about the president's dismal numbers in his approval ratings and polls showing him behind in a potential general election rematch against former President Donald Trump. This reportedly included stern words. Now, when they say stern words, I'm curious if Joe Biden went off on his staffers once again and those that are running his campaign, because he's been known to sit there and cuss up a storm in the Oval Office and go after his staffers for just like random things. You guys, he does it when he does speeches. He does it when he's talking to the press, right? He'll talk really low. And then you want to stop really loud. And then he'll drop back really low. No, I'm kidding. No, what is it? Come on, man. Like, he's known to yell and just randomly go off on people because his head ain't working. Like, he's off. He's off up here. And so we know, and we've covered where he's yelling at his staffers and he's cussing in the Oval Office up a storm. So when they say things like that, where he's having stern words, that means he's losing his ish on people in the White House. In addition to job performance, check this one out. Biden is facing concerns about his fitness to serve a second term. Already the oldest president at the age of 81. The age of 81. Biden would be 86 at the end of his second term. I don't know if he's going to make it. And look, I don't wish any ill will on Joe Biden. I don't want the guy to get hurt. I don't want him to pass away. That's terrible. We should never be saying that against anybody other than people that want to harm us and want to do terrible things to us. Joe Biden, I don't wish any ill will or harm against him. But dude, he is old. He is not all there. I mean, people would be insane to vote for him. But here's the thing. Insane or not, they're going to vote for him, folks. They are going to vote for him big time. Big time. Well, in other news here, this one's kind of interesting. There's a class action lawsuit alleging discrimination against Navy Federal after CNN exclusive report. And this is kind of a hit job, in my opinion. And there's a video here that's going to go along with it, but I kind of want to preface what's really taking place here. So, the largest credit union in the U.S. is facing new scrutiny over racial disparities in its mortgage lending following a CNN investigative report, with a class action lawsuit filed Monday alleging the lender discriminated against Black and Latino applicants, and a senior congressional Democrat demanding answers about these practices. The complaint against Navy Federal Credit Union, filed in a federal court in Virginia on Sunday, comes on the heels of a CNN story which found that the credit union had the widest disparity in conventional mortgage approval rates between black and white borrowers of any major lender last year. We've talked about this time and time again. You guys, I don't mean to kind of point out like, oh, hey, look, I'm a stats teacher. I know everything there is to know, but I am a statistics teacher. Just because there's a disparity in data does not link it to racism, doesn't link it to any wrongdoing. And as a prior auditor in accounting for public companies, and sometimes even private companies, there's always going to be disparities in data from one year to the other. And what we tend to do as auditors and accountants is, hey, why is there a difference in your revenue? Why is there a difference, in your accounts payable? What's going on here? And you ask questions, and then you provide disclosures to the investors or whatever needs to go into the financials for the end of the year or the 10K or whatever it may be, so that you can give people the information of why there was a disparity in data. It's not always because somebody did something wrong. It's not always because there's an error. It's not always because there's some fraud going on or some malicious activity. It could just be is what it is. That's just the way things unfolded, that they naturally happen. But for the left, they don't understand that, folks. We'll come to the video in just 1 second. They don't understand the fact that when you have disparities, that those disparities can naturally happen. And we see that all the time. Like since the creation of the world. I'll give you a prime example. Just in natural order, the way God created things, there's certain areas of the globe that receive differences in climate, meaning there's a disparity in temperature. There's a disparity in weather from one area of the country to the other area of the country, or from one continent to the other continent. So even in that factor, you could point to racism for some way, shape, or form, because maybe blacks in a certain part of the world are more impacted by weather than white people in another part of the world. But because of the disparity, what are we going to say? That there's racism out there with the weather? God's racist all of a sudden? I know it's outlandish. I know that's an extreme analogy, but it still holds suit to a good analogy in terms of how the left viewpoint on all this is so idiotic and ridiculous. But here's a clip here. Let's roll it.
And exclusive reporting shows that Navy Federal Credit Union has the widest disparity in conventional mortgage approval rates between white and black borrowers of any major lender. This is the nation's largest credit union. It serves military members, defense personnel, veterans, and their families. And CNN's Renee Marsh found that it rejected more than half its black conventional mortgage applicants last year.
But it really is a nice neighborhood,
Baba Tandi, a Kenyan immigrant turned Texas entrepreneur, knew this was his dream home the moment he saw it. It's in a highly sought-after school district that his son so desperately wanted to attend for its basketball program.
So how many homes did you look at before you found this one and said this was it?
We had about 6, but this was the one that we all wanted, and we were all praying to get this one.
Otandi's first choice for his mortgage was Navy Federal Credit Union. It services military members, defense personnel, veterans, and their families, and is the largest credit union in the country.
I was the CEO of my company, so I had a pretty good income.
Your credit was in the 700s. You had recently sold your house. You had $100,000 for the down payment, which was more than 20%.
Correct. I mean, what more could you ask for?
CNN reviewed Otandi's financial documents. He even had a pre-approval letter from Navy Federal in hand. But just two
Pre-approval is basically meaningless. I mean, there's a ton of times when a pre-approval basically ends up getting terminated at the end of the day. But it's saying CNN looked at his financials. I mean, that kind of raises red flags for me, because just because you look at somebody's financials, they could be withholding information from you. And you might be asking, well, why would somebody withhold information from somebody? As somebody that people's like taxes for years, people always withheld information from me. And that could be because they think maybe they're breaking the law, or maybe they did something wrong, or maybe they forgot something, or maybe there was an error in something that they did and they don't want to be caught for it, or they think they're going to get in trouble. I mean, I had people, no joke, that wouldn't disclose the fact that they had other rental properties or they purchased a home and were renting it out. They would not disclose that to me. That's just one of many examples. So people do withhold information. Oh, I'm not paying off my student loan. I didn't know I needed to pay off my student loan. That happened to me before as well, doing somebody's taxes. So there's a lot of reasons. So just because they're saying here, oh, well, we looked at their financials, doesn't mean anything.
2 weeks before closing.
They got a denial. They sent me a letter saying, we're sorry, but your application has been denied.
Were you stunned, surprised?
I mean, I was stunned. I was shocked. I was hurt.
The denial letter listed excessive obligations in relation to income.
Interesting. So it says principal reasons for credit denial, termination, or other action taken concerning credit. So excessive obligations in relation to income is honestly a pretty vague phrase there coming from Navy Federal, my guess is, and I don't know for sure because I haven't seen the financials, is those excessive obligations in relation to income means that he probably has a lot of fixed expenses that he needs to take care of. And just because he had $100,000 saved and he also sold his home and he's going to be putting that $100,000, which I guess is more than 20% of the home, is that those fixed expenses in conjunction with his income is really narrowing the gap to the point where they don't feel comfortable issuing him this mortgage or this loan here for a long period of time, which I'd imagine is going to be a 30-year loan, to the point where they're worried that he's actually not going to be able to pay it back at some point. So he's going, well, I'm a CEO. Well, my income's pretty good. You never said what your income was. We only know what was in savings. And just because you have money in savings does not mean that as a CEO, you're making a ton of money. So we don't know how big the business was. We don't really know anything here. And CNN isn't disclosing anything either. They're just shouting, well, this is discrimination. This must be racism because he didn't get a lending or he didn't receive a loan from a lender here, being Navy Federal Credit Union. And well, look at 77% of whites are receiving approval ratings and only like 44% of blacks are receiving approval ratings. There's such a huge disparity. There must be discrimination because that's how the left works. That is their thinking. It's insane thinking. Now, could there be discrimination? Could there be racism taking place? Yes, but you have to prove it. They haven't proved anything. They haven't done anything. They just go, well, they didn't give me a loan and I should have gotten a loan because my credit score is high. I have no debt, supposedly. I mean, we don't know nothing.
As the reason.
When they denied is when we came back and said, oh man, there's something else going on.
And what did you think that something else was?
Discrimination.
But it wasn't just Atandi. Thousands of other black applicants were also rejected. According to a CNN analysis of federal consumer protection data, last year, Navy Federal Credit Union only approved 48%. That's less than half of its black applicants for conventional home mortgages. White borrowers were approved more than 75% of the time. It's the biggest gap among the top 50 lenders. The data also shows Navy Federal was more than twice as likely to deny black mortgage applicants than white ones, even when different variables, including income, debt, property value, and down payment.
So if you look at this income, debt, property value, and down payment, I'd also like to point out they're completely leaving out Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, and all this data. They're merely just showing the disparity between whites and blacks. You could have sitting here Asians getting pre-approval ratings or even approval ratings for loans at higher rates than even whites are. But they're completely leaving this out of the argument. I mean, the cherry picking of data here and the pushing of a narrative is really head spinning, but we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is coming from CNN here. But depending on the locality and where you're at, the income between races, I mean, even within the race itself, I mean, blacks encompass a lot of different types of blacks from around the world. So even them inside their own bracket of being black outcompete each other depending on what type of black you are. And same with debt, same with property value and down payment. So, I mean, you listing these out doesn't really have anything to do with it. Where's the credit score? Where's the possibility of having a prior bankruptcy at some point in your history? Again, there's a lot of questions that are going unanswered, but CNN was supposed to be finding all this out for us. But no, it's just easier to shout racism. It's just easier to shout out discrimination.
Payment percentage were the same.
I feel validated at one point, but also I feel a bit of anger because it shouldn't be happening.
2 weeks after Navy Federal rejected him, another bank approved Atandi for a mortgage. Navy Federal Credit Union denied CNN's request for an on-camera interview. In a statement, it said it is committed to equal and equitable lending practices and that CNN's recent analysis does not account for major criteria required by any financial institution to approve a mortgage loan. That includes credit scores, which are not public. Navy Federal declined to provide additional data. We asked Navy Federal why Bob Otandi's loan was denied, but they declined to comment, citing member privacy. CNN's analysis does not prove discrimination, but it does show dramatic racial disparities in who Navy Federal rejects and approves for conventional mortgage loans.
The black-white homeownership gap and the Latino-white homeownership gap today are both wider than they were in 1968 when we passed the Federal Fair Housing Act.
So why is that? You're just merely stating a statistical data point, but you're not explaining why. And it's insane to me. Oh, well, there's a difference in data. Yeah, why? For example, as teachers, regardless of race, you can have one student that has an A and one student that has an F. Are you going to bitch and complain about that? Or ask the question of, why does this person have an A versus why did this person have an F? Maybe this person studied. Maybe this person didn't. Maybe this person has an easier time in life, and maybe the person has an F could be working multiple jobs as a high schooler just to get by because their family is having a tough time. There's so many reasons as to why something could be, regardless of race. But this is the left. Everything, every portion of their being, every element of their being has to do with race. And it is so frustrating and it's tiring as hell. It is so tiring.
Lisa Rice has spent decades as a fair housing advocate. She says the disparities in Navy Federal's lending data are alarming and an extreme example of a bigger problem.
It's definitely a larger systemic issue. And we know that we have a long history of redlining and a long history of lending discrimination in this nation. Well, all of that data that is sort of tainted with bias is being used to develop the credit scoring systems.
We got the house, thank God, and we moved on. But
Here we go. Here we go. Oh, well, redlining. I mean, you guys, redlining was really impacted in what, like the late 1960s? And it still continued even after there was laws implemented to stop the practice of redlining. It did go on for a decade or two, but it's really been multiple decades where redlining hasn't really been a thing at all. And if there is racism, discrimination taking place, Navy Federal is really going to feel it. But the scary thing here is the left utilizes, again, this idea of disparities in data as racism. So what do they want? I mean, do they want 50-50? Do they want 45? What is it, 65 or whatever? I mean, or 55? How do they want the data distributed where there isn't discrimination? So again, I'm not saying I know everything about stats. I teach statistics, and it really does blow my mind that people think, well, just because there's a disparity within data, there's a difference between two groups, that there must be something malicious going on. Rather than the exorbitant amount of variables that go into something that would factor into the fact of the result of which they're looking at. It's like the idea of, well, women get paid 77 cents on the dollar than men. It's so stupid. It used to be like 53 cents. We do talk about in my book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. They look at the average. And everybody knows you don't look at the average on that because there's a lot of variables. They're looking at it more of a univariate data point in terms of, oh, well, this is just the average. Rather than looking at, hey, let's compare it along career lines. Let's also add in to make sure that they have the same degree, the same amount of hours worked, the same locality, the same state, whatever it may be, and include those variables that are in line with one another of which you're comparing. And then you get more of an accurate data point. And in some cases, you find that women actually get paid more than men, especially if you look in the major cities. I think it's like the top 120 major cities or something like that, or top 20 major cities, women get paid more than men. When you actually utilize that multivariate data across all spectrums between the two genders, the two sexes, between male and female, you'd actually find that women get paid more than men. So it's just crazy. Again, this cherry picking of data. And the sad thing is a lot of people struggle with mathematics. A lot of people struggle with statistics, and rightfully so. I mean, who the hell wants to spend all their time learning all that stuff? But this is how people get away with it. And then you got people believing it. I mean, don't take my word for it. Let's go through a few comments here. We never actually do this. Look at these people. When I lived in Cincinnati, one of my black colleagues, who was a plant manager at the time, was denied a mortgage. He ended up writing a check for the house. Can you imagine turning down a buyer who had enough cash to buy the house outright? Well, why would you take out the loan in the first place? I mean, that sounds kind of idiotic. Why would you put yourself into debt when you could take the money that you would be paying more for, of which that debt is, that you can invest it into compound interest and actually have more money in the next 20 or 30 years than you would have if you would have just wouldn't have taken out loan in the first place? Does that make sense? So in other words, he wrote the check, which is a good move to do, rather than taking out the loan and buying something that's going to be more expensive 30 years down the road than it is right now, when you could just invest that money, that difference of which it would be from 30 years now compared to now, and make a lot of money off of it. So I don't really understand that, but he's going to say there's a widespread problem and an example of structural racism. So no proof, no proof here of racism. We're just going to shout it to the sky once again because some dude got denied a loan. So if I get denied a loan, am I going to shout racism? Because I'm a member actually of Navy Federal. Am I gonna just shout discrimination to the sky because I'm some white dude? This is what institutional racism. Here we go again. This is what institutional racism looks like. I don't want to hear any more talk about post-racial society. Racism remains a core part of American society, period. Nobody's saying it isn't. Nobody's saying racism doesn't exist. What we're seeing on the right, specifically conservatives, is that it's not, if you looked at the top 100 issues of our society, racism is not even in the top 100. So it's crazy how they're going to keep pushing this whole racism narrative because that's what the Democrats want. They want that vote, which is astonishing if you really think about it. From the inception of that whole party was founded on racism, was founded on slavery. From them utilizing slavery, not wanting to eradicate it, they wanted to promote it. Hence why we had a civil war. Went to war for it, where the white man fought for the black man. You had hundreds of thousands of people die for the end of slavery, the abolishment of it. And then you have the Democrat Party going, well, that's not good enough, so we're going to start up the KKK and hang a bunch of blacks and whites. And we're going to put burning crosses up. We're going to do all this crazy shit. And then they're going to vote against the civil rights movement, all this stuff. I mean, the revisionist history, the Howard Zinn revisionist history is insane. That's what they teach in the school system. But this is why people come out of this education system thinking racism remains a core part of American society, period. And, oh, well, there's institutional racism out there. Can't really point towards why. There's just a disparity in data. Now there's institutional racism. It's so wild. It's tiring, you guys. It's tiring. 52% disapproval is not an accident. Maybe it's not an accident, but if you recall, the lending practices during 2008 and before were kind of idiotic, where everybody was just getting loans. Everybody that shouldn't have been getting loans. So now when you have banks actually implementing a policy that might be working best for them and their members so they don't go under, so we don't have another economic collapse like we did in 2008, all of a sudden it's discrimination. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I mean, the amount of people here just going, racism, discrimination. It's really head spinning. Like I said, it's just tiring as hell. These people don't know a damn thing, and they're going, well, his credit score was 780. He had $100,000 in the bank. There's more factors that go into somebody receiving a loan than just your credit score and the amount of money that you have in savings or your down payment. Everybody knows that. Well, moving into some other news here, we got Texas governor signs new immigration law allowing state to arrest migrants. Now, we did cover this in the past. It wasn't actually adopted. It was just something that's being implemented, but now it's taking effect here. Thank God. Republican Governor Greg Abbott of Texas on Monday signed one of the harshest state immigration laws in modern U.S. history, authorizing state officials to arrest and seek the deportation of migrants suspected of crossing the border with Mexico illegally. Good on Texas. This is what they should be doing. This is what our federal government should be doing, but they don't want to do it. Just a dereliction of duty, which is why I said time and time again, this is one of the main things I think Joe Biden should be impeached on, as well as DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, for a clear dereliction of duty. The law, known as SB 4, gives Texas law enforcement authorities the power to stop, arrest, and jail migrants on new state-level illegal entry charges. It also allows state judges to issue de facto deportation orders against suspected violators of the law, though it's unclear how this provision could be enforced. Now, that's kind of the question that I had, because just you being here illegally in the first place is you being a violator of the law. So is that kind of the issuance of de facto deportation, that you're just here illegally? And maybe that's their plan at the end of the day, is that, hey, you're here illegally, you're a violator of the law, see ya, you're out. But also, I mean, my question is, how long is it going to take for the state judges to issue this deportation order? From what I'm hearing, the courts are already backed up already. So are we just going to allow them into the interior of the country like we have been doing, and then issuing them a court date that's 4 years down the road and going, hey, well, you're here illegally, now you're going to be deported. It's already been 4 years. Trump's already in office, and now he's the bad guy. Maybe that is the plan. Maybe, I don't know. Passed by Texas legislature, you have SB 4 being an extraordinary attempt by the state to inject itself into immigration and border enforcement, both longstanding federal prerogatives. It will almost certainly trigger a high-stakes legal and political clash with civil rights groups and potentially the Biden administration. Oh, the Biden administration is going to step into this. 100% they're going to step into this. They're salivating at the mouth right now because they're looking for a legal battle on this thing. The reason why I emphasize that last bit of their salivating is because they've been doing everything they possibly can to go against Greg Abbott here and Doug Ducey of Arizona. If you recall, they put in razor wire. And then you have the Biden administration going, oh, well, you can't have razor wire because it's hurting these immigrants because they're cutting themselves. And I said, no, duh. It's like putting a stove in your apartment or your house and your kid touching it and they burn themselves. Yeah, don't touch it. You're going to burn yourself. Or are you cutting yourself with a knife? Well, it's too sharp. I had no idea. I mean, there's always going to be idiots out there. No duh, you're going to cut yourself on razor wire. How about you don't walk through it? How about that being one? And second, how about you don't come here illegally and you do the correct process of what you're supposed to do and not cut the line in front of everybody else? I understand you want to come here for a better life. I totally get it. Easier for me to say because I'm sitting here in the greatest country God's ever created. The left doesn't think so, but we here as patriots believe it, don't we? Let me know in the chat. Give me a salute in the American flag, baby. Because we are in the greatest country that God's ever created here. And people want to flock here. Millions of people want to be here. Both good and bad people want to be here. And what's happening is you're having good and bad people coming in, and we don't know who the hell they are. We don't know one bit about them. And the Biden administration is doing everything they can to stop Doug Ducey, Greg Abbott, and Ron DeSantis from protecting the borders. So Greg Abbott puts in buoys. They don't like the buoys. Oh, well, people could drown. You're putting it only at the shallow end. So they're having to go into the deep end and get across the river. How about they don't go across the river? So why is it everything that these guys do to sit there and protect the borders, you actually counteract with some sort of legal suit or some sort of lawsuit? Then you have them putting in the storage containers, the shipping containers in the desert. No harm, no foul, nothing being done. Oh, well, let's bring in the EPA. Here's another lawsuit. Get rid of the shipping containers because you're ruining the environment. I mean, it's exhausting. And then at the same time, they're going to stand there on the podium every week and tell us, oh, well, we care about this. Joe Biden's losing sleep. It's his number one issue, but it's Republicans' fault. Really? Look what Republicans are trying to do right now to stop this. You're going out of your way to stop Republicans from securing the border so their state isn't being effed. They're not responsible to the federal government. This dude's responsible, meaning Greg Abbott, Doug Ducey of Arizona, and Ron DeSantis are responsible for their constituents, the people that voted for them. And they're doing everything they damn well can to sit there and stop this massive flow, 10 million people coming through our border. And the Biden administration doesn't want to do it. And they're going to sit there and lie to everybody. And like I said, people are going to still soak it all up. Go, oh my God, the border's fine, the border's secure. DHS Secretary Alejandro Marcus said so. Kamala Harris said the border's secure. Like she stood on the podium and said, don't come. Don't come. She said it one time. And Joe Biden, well, he came to the border. He came to El Paso. Never talked to an illegal immigrant. Never saw an illegal immigrant. Dude was there for 3 hours for nap time and went home. So completely a lie, a fabrication. I don't know what the hell is going on with our government, but this needs to stop here. And hopefully SB4 here is one of the mechanisms that could be in place here to help stop the massive flow that we have here at the southern border. And speaking of the southern border, folks, the left are going after Trump. Trump enrages the left with immigration comments. Team Biden claims he wants to lock up millions. And this is where we've covered in the past of these news outlets just running endless segments of twisting Donald Trump's words here regarding calling illegal immigrants, a certain portion of them, poisonous. And we'll get into that in just one moment. But they are just, they're losing their minds right now. And it's only going to get worse here in 2024. Former President Donald Trump unnerved Democrats and leftist commentators over the weekend with his remarks on immigration at a New Hampshire rally. During his speech in Durham, New Hampshire, on Saturday, Trump focused on illegal immigration as the border crisis under President Joe Biden worsens with record numbers of migrants unlawfully crossing into the U.S., which is something, again, we've been covering for the last 3 years now. Quote, they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country. I think Donald Trump's right on that, by the way. I think it's way more than 10 million. Way, way more. When they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. And this is where Trump got in trouble for that sentence right there. They're poisoning the blood of our country. And I'll give my commentary on it in just 1 minute. I want to finish this quote. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just to 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. Trump's reference to poisoning the blood outraged many in the left who said that the phrase was reminiscent of language used by Adolf Hitler. So here we go. He's a Nazi. He's a racist. He's a bigot, a sexist, homophobe. This is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to call Trump Hitler. They have been doing it. We ran that super cut the other day where that's all they've been going after this guy on. It's just the things that he said, and they're misconstruing it, misunderstanding what the man's actually talking about. Democrats in the Biden campaign took issue with the words claiming Trump was parroting Hitler. Oh, God. With the remarks. Biden campaign then argued that Trump has a plan to lock up millions of people in detention camps. Oh, geez, here we go. Folks, we have actual images of Joe Biden locking people up. We showed it here on the show during COVID. It was so bad they were stuffing illegal immigrants into these pods, basically these cages. I mean, that's what they were. They were cages, actual chain link fences. Some of them were plastic. They were stuffing so many in there that they couldn't fit anybody else. And they were pleading with the CDC to increase capacity to 100%, which was also kind of asinine within itself, because when you look in these pods, people are laying on top of one another or standing vertically right next to each other. For example, they're stuffing like 300-400 people in these pods that would only hold like 200-250, meaning it's asinine because they've already exceeded the 50% limit that these pods were going to hold in the first place. They doubled the capacity of the pod, and they were still pleading with the CDC to allow 100% capacity in these areas at the border. Furthermore, they were taking these people from one area of the country to another area of the country because they didn't have enough space for them at the border because they were all stuffed in there like sardines. And they're going to sit there while Trump wants to lock everybody up. It's like, what can we say that's the most outlandish possible thing to get people to be scared of Donald Trump so they vote for Joe Biden, even though those people that they're scaring are still going to vote for Joe Biden because they're so scared, but they disapprove of Joe Biden's job performance, his handling of the economy, inflation, or whatever, like we saw in our first segment. They're still going to vote for him because of all the fear-mongering that's being done by MSNBC, CNN, and all these other outlets. MSNBC host Joe Scarborough said Trump was literally channeling Hitler, talking about poisoning the blood of America. Scarborough's co-host, Mika Brzezinski, added, Donald Trump once again used the language of 20th century authoritarians. It's so tiring, you guys. It's so tiring. Now, should have Donald Trump used those words? No. No, he shouldn't have used those words. But he's not talking about every illegal immigrant. What he's talking about is there's people coming here illegally. They're not going through the right process of which they should be doing. Some of these people don't want to assimilate into our country. They don't want to be a part of our creed. They don't want to uphold the values that make this country great. They don't want to buy into the idea of what America is. And so in doing so, it's their ideology that they're taking from their home country and bringing into our country that is poisoning it. We talked about something kind of similar in my book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. It's their ideology, the left's ideology, and those who immigrate here with this leftist ideology that are, in a nutshell, tearing this country from the inside out. Just like a Trojan virus, which was initially going to be the title of the book, Trojan Horse, Trojan virus, same thing. It's a virus. It's a sickness that's brought in. Not every illegal immigrant has this. There's many people that want to assimilate to our country. There's many people that want to take hold, the American dream and prosper here. But what's being said is not about those people that just want to have a good life here. He's not talking about those people. He's talking about, for example, the people like MS-13 that he called savage animals when he was president of the United States. And the left did the exact same thing they're doing right here. They're spinning his words. They're taking it out of context. I know I'm speaking to all of you and you guys understand this, but it's crazy how the left will sit here and they'll take him saying poisoning the blood and completely not able to make the connection of what he's talking about. I'm able to make and decipher that of like, hey, there's kind of two groups. There's immigrants that want to come here. They want to prosper. They're doing it illegally. That's not the right way of doing it. And there's those that want to come here illegally that don't want to be prosperous. They just want to do harm to our country, harm to American citizens. They don't want to assimilate whatsoever. They want to sell drugs. They want to sex traffic, whatever it may be. He's talking about those group of people, and to sit there and not being able to actually comprehend what the hell he's talking about is freaking annoying as hell. And like I said, people aren't able to do it. Just like we saw in the other segment. Well, there's institutional racism out there because of the disparity between whites and blacks. There's always going to be a disparity, you freaking knuckleheads. Always. Very rarely, when you leave something up to actual individual behavior, you're going to have disparities. I can give you a prime example. I have two students, both twins, living in the same household, going to the same school, has the same teacher, is in the same class. You could have a situation where one of them gets 100% and the other one gets an F. You can have that situation, and I've had that situation before. You're offered the same services, the same teacher, the same school, the same curriculum, the same iPad, the same packet. You're offered everything the same, and you're still going to have disparities. Why? Because there's individual decision-making, and the left can't understand that at all. There just must be some sort of racism out there. There must be some sort of discrimination. So when you have one twin get an A, you have the other twin get an F, you could say, well, your teacher's discriminating against the other twin because there's such a disparity. There's a 50% disparity rather, and that's so big. Am I making sense here? Let me know in the live chat. Am I making sense? I'm in there with you guys. You guys see my name. That's me typing. Oh, I love you guys. we do have an awesome community. We do have an awesome community. Can we write in the chat, not just the chat, but the comment section, just let everybody know that stumbles upon our channel. One of the best communities. You got to subscribe to the Bald Brad channel. We want you here. A lot of regulars. There's a join tab. You just watching all the way through, folks, does yeoman works. You hitting that like button and commenting. That's all we need here on the Bald Brad Show. We are growing. We're almost at 50,000, folks. Try to help me get there. 50,000. But they're going after him for all these shenanigans. And like I said, I know what he meant by poisoning the blood. Again, he's talking about the ideology that's being brought here. And it is poisoning. It's poisoning what our value system is. And that's why you see the left here growing. And they're an outgrowth of the Democrat Party. And they're destroying our country from the inside out. And look, folks, I think it's so bad where there is no turning back. I think there's such a crippling from all institutions at high level that I don't think there's a way of turning the ship around. And I know that's probably not the answer you guys want to hear, but I've tried my best to really think about how we can sit there and turn and correct course. Now, us bringing in Trump or like a Ramaswamy or a DeSantis, it's only going to, we're going to be able to steer it, but it's only going to allow us to survive long enough. It's kind of like when you have cancer and the left's ideology is cancer, it's crippling the body, meaning the American institutions, just the America within itself. And that chemo is basically prolonging you just dying. So you can look at it as the Republican Party as chemo. It's a terrible analogy. It's super rough. But we're basically prolonging the collapse of this great country. And it's sad to say, but you can go from not just an ideological level, but also our value systems being crumbled by the left, the progressive left, again, that's an outgrowth of the Democrat Party, but also just the $34 trillion in debt we have. When you look at history, there's really only been ever one country that's gotten out of some sort of debt that's terrible. There's never been a country that's had any sort of debt like us in human history and has been able to come back from it. So with those types of odds, it's not good. And lastly, we are, when I say an outlier of republics and democracies in human history that have survived this long, we are an outlier. There's never been a republic with democratic habits, democratic institutions, implementation through policies that have lasted as long as us. So the further that we actually go down that road of being an outlier, the more likely it is that we'll actually have a collapse from the inside out. And that's, again, what you're seeing right now. And I know I keep plugging my book, you guys, but I do think it's that good. And it was enough for me to actually get my butt in gear and write something like this, because I do think that it's that valuable to see what's going on inside our major institutions, what's going on with the ideology that Donald Trump's talking about here with poisoning the blood, poisoning the ideology of this nation in this book. It's a great Christmas gift. I know I keep plugging it. I'm going to keep plugging it. We're probably going to write a new one for next year. And another one, not a volume 2, but something different here. But there you have it. The media is just losing their crap on Donald Trump. And you might be thinking, well, what's new? Well, it's not new, but we're going to keep you up to date nonetheless because we care about you here at the Bald Brad Show. Also, in other news, students rejecting early Harvard acceptance as anti-Semitism stigma plagues Ivy League institutions. So if you recall, all these Ivy Leagues were asked the question about, is basically saying death to all Jews in a nutshell, or the eradication of Jews, is that considered bullying and harassment? And they couldn't answer, right? Well, according to our clause and our content, it has to actually move into some form of actual movement in the criticism within itself, like some stupid ass thing, right? So none of them would actually sit there and say that it was bullying and harassment, which is such a shoo-in question. I mean, that's a layup of a question. And so you had, I think, the president of Yale, I think it was, don't quote me on that. I think it was Yale that ended up resigning. Well, the president of Harvard hasn't resigned either. And it says here, a place at Harvard used to be something to boast about. Now students fear it as a stigma. Yeah, because there's firms right now, both law firms and various other firms like accounting firms, that actually aren't hiring anymore from Harvard. So if you're an applicant from Harvard, you're being thrown in the trash can. And people go, well, they don't literally throw you in the trash can. Yeah, they do. And if they don't throw you in the trash can, they're going to have some sort of metric that's being funneled through their applicant system that actually is just going to weave you out the second that it reads Harvard. Early applicants who received acceptance letters from university last week are considering applying elsewhere. Yeah, I would too. There's a lot of firms, dude, that aren't going to hire you right now. Some are citing concerns about experiencing campus anti-Semitism, while others worry a Harvard degree could hurt job prospects, there you go, as employers pledge not to hire its graduates because of the university's handling of anti-Israel protests. This year, the school reported a 17% drop in early applications, representing a 4-year low. Holy lordy. and their acceptance rate creeped up 8.7% from 7.6% last year. Oh my God, that's a nasty number, man. It might not seem like a big number. 17% is a hit. That is a kick in the nuts. One driver, according to a college admissions consultant, is students concerned that they may get tainted by the storm around the college anti-Semitism program. Yeah, I would say so. There already is a stigmatism now. This is going to go on for a long time. This is always going to be brought up now. The fact that a president of Harvard isn't willing to sit there and condemn the actions of these protesters, basically saying the elimination of Jews as being bullying and harassment. A layup of a question. You could just switch out Jews for blacks, Hispanics, Asians, whatever, whites. It's all wrong. It's not okay. But the left, you guys, the left are all for this stuff. That's the crazy thing about it. They're for segregation, which we're seeing from some universities and have been seeing for a decade now. Actually separating dorms between whites and blacks. Different graduations between whites and blacks. It's insane. And they're all for it. I mean, they're taking a step backwards. And then they're going to go shout institutional racism out there in the ether. I've always said the best case of institutional racism, if there is some, would be affirmative action. So if you want to talk about racism that's intertwined within our institutions, affirmative action is by definition racist. So I don't believe there's institutional racism, but if I was to build a case, like if I had to debate somebody, affirmative action would be on the top of the list right there. It also says here, I think it's current events at play. They're getting the worst PR ever right now. I mean, this is the Bud Light moment for Harvard, basically. 30 Harvard student groups sparked outrage in October by signing a letter saying Israel was entirely responsible for October 7th attacks. I mean, that is such an insane thing to say. Even if you don't like Israel, that is such an insane thing to say. And they're getting away with it. And they'll continue to get away with it. Why? Because the left runs all major institutions. They run the media. They run the news. They run our entertainment industry, which is the same as the media. They run our newspapers, which is the same as the media. I mean, hell, they run the education system, which you're seeing here from the top down, from literally the highest levels of education all the way down to the lowest levels of education. So when you have leftists and other leftists saying insane things, you're going, oh, what's the big deal? That's fine. So, you know, it's going to be up to conservatives and corporations to sit there and not hire, but they will. Some of them will. Some of them, I'm sure Disney's just salivating right now with the mouth. Going, oh, I got to hire from Harvard. That was a joke, okay? Don't come after me. You can't mess with the mouse, folks. You can't mess with the mouse. Speaking of Disney, Jonathan Majors dropped by Marvel after conviction. Don't come after me, Disney. I'm just reporting the news. That last one was a joke. Everybody heard it, okay? I'm telling you, the mouse will come after you. Marvel has dropped actor Jonathan Majors after the actor was found guilty of assault and harassment on Monday following the conclusion of high-profile trial in New York. This is mega news and a massive blow to Marvel, a massive blow to Disney. The amount of money they invested of writing scripts, the planning, the phases that they've done, that it's going to take a decade now to actually have to unravel. I mean, they've already been doing a kind of damage control with Loki. This is wild. I mean, you're talking a massive investment in this guy, and he completely dropped the ball on it. And Disney has already been digging themselves a hole as it is, and now this comes up, which just digs more of a hole. The studio didn't share additional details. Majors was acquitted of a separate assault charge, and of aggravated assault. Majors has maintained his innocence throughout, with attorney arguing that the accuser, Majors' former girlfriend, had fabricated the whole ordeal. Believe all women! I was told to believe all women! Of course, I'm joking. Can't believe all women. I mean, a lot of women have lied. You got the case about Duke guys supposedly raping somebody, and other fabrication of celebrities making up stuff on other celebrities that wasn't ever real in the first place. And I've always said, if you're going to fabricate a lie, like if you're going to make a claim that a guy raped you and you're lying and you were caught lying, I think you should receive the same charge that he was going to receive, because now you just destroyed his life, because you got the media just willy-nilly just running things without actually finding any sort of proof or waiting for more evidence to come out if the case was true or not true. Johnny Depp, for example. Look what happened with Disney on that one. Johnny Depp won't return to Disney because they fired the guy for doing another Pirates of the Caribbean because of some sort of, I don't know, did he beat his girlfriend or something? I can't even remember. So Majors' charge stemmed from a March dispute that led to this person being hospitalized for minor injuries. Prosecutors argued that Majors had been physically and psychologically abusive towards this person for years, culminating in the alleged assault. Meanwhile, Majors' defense team has long claimed that this person was actual aggressor in the former couple's altercation. I mean, it just seems like just a crazy scenario as it is. I don't think anybody should be putting hands on anybody. I don't think women should hit men. I don't think men should hit women. I think it's a terrible thing with what's going on here. And if he did do this, you know, that's what happens with the law. But more or less, the part I want to come up with is just Disney just crippling on all levels right now, from their theme parks to their media and their entertainment. They can't get their stuff right because they're pushing a woke agenda. And I'm surprised they're not backing Jonathan Majors here with their woke agenda, going, hey, believe all women, believe men, believe anybody and everybody, because men can be women can be men. He could be a woman for all we know. So is that actual aggregated assault? I mean, if a woman's hitting a woman, is that allowed? Is it not allowed? I don't know. It's all craziness here with the left when you morph reality and you make things fantasy-wise, if that's what you want to call it. This is when everything goes south. But there you have it. Marvel's just dropping Jonathan Majors, man. That is crazy news right there. That is breaking news as of yesterday afternoon. And I mean, Marvel centered the whole. He's like the oh god, I'm gonna mess this up. Who's the guy with the glove that was in the last not Age of Ultron, but oh my god, you guys are probably screaming at me right now. The guy that was the main villain of the last one. I can't remember his name, but he's the guy that wore the glove and stuff like that. But he's supposed to be the next main villain, and now they can't do that anymore unless they recast the guy. Jonathan Majors is out, so wild stuff happening here. A long-form show once again. Think about joining us, folks. I know Bidenomics sucks, and I don't know if you heard this. It's actually a random story. Joe Biden and the communications team, the PR team over there in the White House, are trying to do away with calling it Bidenomics now because it's doing so bad. Bidenomics is doing so bad, they're trying to rebrand it again. And so rather than actually coming up with a new name, they're just going after what's called Maganomics and saying how bad Maganomics is. And nobody's buying it. Nobody's buying their bullshit right now because everybody's lives was so much better under Donald Trump than it is under Joe Biden. But again, I think it's just funny that they're no longer using Bidenomics anymore because this knucklehead, I mean, does this look like a winning, does it look like a winning face for Bidenomics? Is that a face? Is that a face that you want to push out there to the public? You guys let me know. I love hanging out with you guys so much. Honestly, this is the best part of the day. Head over to baldbrad.com. We got a lot of goodies for you guys. The new year is coming up. We're going to make some changes here. Hopefully positive changes. Nothing bad. Always good, in my opinion. But we'll run that by you closer to the new year. One more year of Joe Biden, folks. Thank God. Let's hope nothing bad or terrible happens, like World War III or something, or our economy collapsing, whatever it may be under Joe Biden. We got to get out there and vote. There's going to be a lot of messaging happening in 2024. Thank you so much. Hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. If you forgot what the question of the day is, what's your order at Starbucks or whatever coffee place you go to? It says a lot about the person. And some of you are little divas. Some of you are little bougie in your orders, meaning prima donnas. But hey, no judgment here. We're not casting any judgment. It's just a fun little question for us to get to know one another. Folks, have a lovely day, and I'll see you tomorrow here on The Bald Brad Show.